Maud Christum franguedare, Mauden quis conatirdi, Mauden Madur Galvaria, Mauden plenium Eihim, Anodar Ionar, Brenin Nevade Aranor, Marius Iene Berson, Marvel Dieu, Marvel Din, Maure Deguch bei Haulgaruch, Gwina Grinang Tegenim, Maurius Ananef, Areor Selegadarnugre. It was the stone rejected by the builders that became the keystone. We have this rejection of grace coming in right through the gospel, but here we have a very strict warning that actually it is those who are most favoured who find that they cast themselves out by casting out the heir. They cast out the most precious one who comes, they cast out the Son himself. They will have the heritage, so they think. The Lord clearly is speaking to the Pharisees and those in authority who have been entrusted with much and from whom much will be expected. Later on, we find in the early life of the Church that this pattern re-emerges. St. Paul, in no uncertain terms, refers to the fact that they have now to turn to the Gentiles because they have considered themselves unworthy of the message. The same, perhaps, can be coming down to us. Not in this case Jews or expert Jews, but the very ones that the Lord then came to hand on this treasure to, we the Gentiles, who, if we're not careful, can end up with less than the coherence of the Jews with regard to the limited amount that they still have, for they nevertheless are true in their prayer, and they are true in their coherence with what they understand to be the demands of that prayer. One is edified by the quality, for instance, of their Shabbat, the way in which they do as a family honour this one day in 7, the way that they do actually take prayer seriously, and the things of God are taken care of. The care given to the Word, the way it is enthroned and carefully used, are lessons unto us. We must not think that we are superior in everything. And so we, by now, by our presumption, can find ourselves in a new form of self-exclusion from what actually the Lord wanted to give. We have the maximum, and what is happening? We have grown hardened of heart like them. Now, within the Christian family, one can see this happening here or there also. We have, in the East and in the West, coming from the apostles, the sacramental life. But in the West we have lost a part of our brethren through the revolution that happened in the 1500s. They went off without the sacraments, but with the Word. And we have the fullness of Word and Sacrament in the West, but we again could be in a form of self-exclusion from its benefit, especially if one compares again what has happened out there with our brethren, not all, but some, who have a very great fidelity to that Word, the way that they honour it, by preaching well upon it, by sharing it, by meditating upon it in the morning, asking for a word from the Holy Spirit and taking it for the day, and then by the way in which they take its demands seriously, such as, again, the keeping of the Christian Sabbath. And the family day of Sunday, and also the quality which goes into their sincere prayer, partly for the reason that without set prayer they cannot be quite so easily fooled, whereas if we're not careful we can actually be deluding ourselves with regard to the fact that we're praying when in fact we're not praying. We are saying prayers, and set prayers have the disadvantage of, if we're not careful, having that fact happen before our eyes without our realizing it. Our time is spent actually in machine mode, like a Tibetan prayer machine. These were things which went round in Tibet, and they still do actually, and made a kind of noise, and in them were prayers, and it was thought that they were, as it were, perpetuating the prayer of man. Well, we have to be careful, because we are not machines. We are in relationship, and prayer has to be not less sincere, but more sincere than that of our brethren who have only a part. For we have the presence as well, and therefore there is genuine encounter, potentially. We have word and sacrament, and therefore presence, therefore the maximum. And if we want to, we can genuinely encounter, not just spiritually, but as it were physically, for the angels too are there in our midst. Which brings me to where I want to land. The way in which the greatest of all gifts of the Lord is handled is something that we will be judged upon. I'm talking specifically of the gift of the Lord's body and blood. We, in the West, because of the way that things have evolved over the centuries, not immediately, but in the Middle Ages especially, have frequent celebrations. In the East, it's unevolved. It's just as it was over the centuries when they started, always fully sung, and therefore far more rare, much longer, 3 hours. In the Christian communities which have come out of us, we have different stages of evolution. Newman himself, when he was an Anglican clergyman, did not celebrate every Sunday. It was something that came with the Oxford movement and influenced, even to our day, the Anglican Communion. In the churches, or rather we shouldn't say churches actually, but ecclesial communities, because they haven't actually got bishops, but those communities which came out of the Anglican Church, they have a more rare celebration. In Wales, we have normally a monthly one in the nonconformist setting, and in Scotland, in the Presbyterian setup, they have one on a quarterly basis. Now, in Scotland, I know that they have great preparations in the days preceding the quarterly celebrations because of its rarity, 4 times a year. In Wales, I remember growing up, Thursday was given as a preparation for the monthly celebration, and there would be a prayer meeting on a Thursday evening in preparation for it. And because of its relative rarity, it was done with great intensity. Now, it does not have to happen that a large number of celebrations leads to a diminution. But human nature being what it is, it can, and we need to be aware of the danger. And unfortunately, we are inheriting a situation which was already there before the Council and had led to abuse of a different sort. There was usually obedience on the level of the rubrics, but on the level of the word, because the words were said in obedience, they were said at a tremendous speed quite often, and that was going on around the altars of the world, in some countries more than others, but it was precisely this element of prayer in which one questions sometimes the level of engagement. It was the Holy Spirit wanted to address at Vatican II, but we must be careful, because if we don't realize what is at work, we will ourselves not benefit from the renewal. There is a huge peace available in a calm, not overloaded celebration of the sacred mysteries. There is a calm in the breviary, not overloaded, but sung and celebrated, even alone, with pauses. which is a benefit in our time which we want to grasp if we are not to miss the whole point of the explosion of renewal that we are asked to apply. The choice is ours. We should have not less but far more than our brethren across the Christian board. But this element of automatic pilot must at all costs be removed, and in its place we must place loving, calm, serene gazing, pausing upon the word and feeling what is there beside us.
Salem. There is a beauty in simplicity that is beheld but by the simple eye, that looks upon the abiding Trinity, awaiting in recesses deep, yet high, too high to be approached with petulance, about the perfect note, the pleasing sight, e'en though these two have oft rent dark veils, whence have issued rays of grace and glory bright. We do but need to grasp the utterness of this our brethren's clinging love, to fathom what moves in this emptiness that holds an overflowing from above. For there is truth within the gentlest touch that has been meant, full meant, with meaning such.